Hello, my name is Javier and this is MakingWebShows.com. Welcome to the second video of our Development 101 tutorial. This video, it's all about writing, about story, but not about writing the screenplay itself, but about the story design. It's very important to design the story before we write. Although there are some writers that disagree with me, I find it that it's much easier if before actually sitting down and writing the screenplay, we already have in mind what our beginning, our middle, and end, our conflicts, and what the whole season is going to be like. The objective of this video is to give you the tools to write your logline, to put together your treatment, and to put together your outline, as well as develop some of your main characters and secondary characters that you might find. We are going to see the story from the beginning all the way till the end. We're going to see the story arc, and we're going to put all that together. So in the next video, when we sit down and write the screenplay, we already have an idea of where we want to go. So before we go into designing the story, we need to identify what are the elements that we need to develop for this story to be designed around. There are mainly three elements that I can identify and that I think they're important to talk about. Some writers are going to disagree with me. Some writers are going to talk about two elements. Some writers are going to talk about many more elements. But the basic, what I believe, it's the elements for building a story and mostly for a web series, are these three elements. The first element is our character. The character is the main person that the story is going to be happening to. Then we need a what happens, a circumstance, an event, an action. Whether this action is an action that the character takes proactively, hint, this is usually the best thing, or an action that happens to the character. They're both important and they're both valid. And the third element, also very important and a lot of people tend to forget, is the obstacle, the conflict. This is what makes the story intriguing and what makes people want to watch more. They want to know how our character overcomes these obstacles and obtains, or rather doesn't obtain, what the character wants at the end of the story. So we need to identify them, right? Take down pen and paper right now and start writing down who your character is, what happens to your character, and what's the conflict in this story. I'm going to set up an example of a story that I actually started developing as I developed this tutorial. The story, my main character, it's call him Ryan. He's a 35-year-old tech genius. He's a little bit of a hacker and a little bit of a gadget freak. That's my character. That's who he is. What happens to him? He actually creates a machine that puts your brain and puts your mind in a level similar to the Buddhist nirvana. He doesn't want to talk about it to many people because he discovers a way that you can artificially bring people to nirvana. Another obstacle is that there's a whole bunch of dark monks, a legion of dark monks who want to take the machine from him and use them for their own purposes. Those are the three elements of my story, and those are the three elements that I'm going to design the story around. Does that mean that there are no other characters rather than the monks and this guy Ryan? No, of course there are many other characters, but this is the core of our story. So now take your time, take 5 minutes, take 10 minutes, pen and paper, or on the text document on your computer, and write this down. I'll wait here. Just pause the video and write it down. Okay, now that you know who your character is and what happens to it and what are the obstacles or the main obstacles that your character is going to encounter on his journey, we are going to write the logline. And what is a logline exactly? Well, the logline is that little 2-sentence, 3-sentence snippet that you read in the movie reviews, or that you read right when you go in Netflix and you just hover on top of the poster with your mouse and you see that little bubble pop up and it just says like 1 or 2 sentences there. That's your logline. That's what people read first, and it's going to present your story, and it's going to let people know whether they want to watch it, whether it's interesting or not. So let's write this logline, and it's very easy. If you had already identified these 3 elements, it's basically putting these 3 elements in 2 sentences or in 1 sentence for the audience to be intrigued by it and want to watch it. In other cases, it's for the investors to be intrigued by it and want to read the business plan. They're both important, right? Depending on who you're approaching at what time. But the logline is going to be, in a way, your presentation card. So to write this logline, I have a little formula that I use. You don't have to use it, but since you have already identified the elements, let's just use it. I take my who, my what, and my obstacle and write it down in a sentence. So for example, the logline of the story that I just presented could be something like, Ryan, 35-year-old Brooklyn-based genius, invents a machine that brings people to nirvana. He finds that he needs to protect the machine from a legion of monks who's trying to take it from him, and he knows he's the only one that can save it. Now, this is not the best syntaxes in a logline. There might be a lot of work that can be done in a rewriting, which I'm going to do. But for the purpose of the video, for the purpose of the tutorial, you know what I'm talking about. So now that you still have your pen and your paper handy, or you have your text document open in your computer, take 5-10 minutes and write down that logline. Remember, it should be like a tweet. It should be like a little Facebook status almost. This is what's going to be in the About page in your Facebook. This is going to be your bio on Twitter. This is going to be how you're going to be pitching your story really quickly to people. It's not the elevator pitch. The elevator pitch is something else. We're not going to work on that here. But it is your calling card in a way. So go ahead, write it down, I'll be right here. Also important and different to these elements is the theme of your story. This is something that a lot of writers overlook, and that's what makes the difference between a compelling, amazing story and a good story. I'm not saying that people who overlook this are not good writers or that their stories are not good. I'm just saying that the ones that actually take a second to find out this element are going to have a much better connection with their audience. This element is the theme. And what the hell is the theme? It was very hard to me to understand at first, after I went through several screenwriting courses and several screenwriting books, and all of a sudden it showed up. So this theme, it's not a person, it's not a character, it's an idea. It's almost philosophical. And it's what's going to make your story flow together in all the different levels of your story. So this idea of the theme is what you as a screenwriter want to really say through your story. A theme could be love lasts forever, if your story is about everlasting love. Another theme could be crime doesn't pay, or crime pays, depending on your point of view. It's a good opportunity to really understand why you're telling this story and what is the message that you want to convey. For example, in the story that I was just talking about, the elements that I just identified, the theme to me, it's the nirvana in itself is not enough. That's what the theme is. It's going to be, and that's what I'm going to talk about. Enlightenment for the sake of enlightenment, it's just not enough. But it's important to know this, because this is what's going to drive every word of your screenplay, every action of your screenplay, whether it's going to go against or for this value. So yes, that's it. Think of the theme as a value, of the value that holds the story together. So now you have your logline, now you have identified the elements of your story, and now we need to start building that story up, right? What are the other things that happen in this story? So our next step is going to be to write a treatment. But before we write the treatment, it's important for us to understand the 3-act structure in a story. A lot of you might already heard about this, and it holds true still for a season on a web series. Within each episode, there needs to be a 3-act structure too. There are other crazy structures out there. I would recommend, if you're not an expert writer, not to even deal with that. But just learn your structure, and then once you know your structure, break all the rules, but break them knowing that you're breaking them. So here are the rules of a 3-act structure. More than rules, are like conventions, really. First, we have a first act. Our first act, it's usually the first third of a story, maybe a little less than a third of a story, a quarter of the story. And what we do in the first act is introduce the character, introduce what the character does, wants, and strives for. And at the end of that act, something happens that spins our character into the story, into the journey. This is their first turning point. It is important because these are the first questions, and these are going to be the first moments, the first peaks. Excuse me. It's going to be the first peaks that the characters deal with. Then we go into our second act, right after that plot point, right after that turn, that twist, that event that bends our story into a new direction. This is the developing, what happens throughout the journey. And it's usually divided in half. Usually in the middle of that, you're going to have another event that sets your character into a new direction. This second event, that middle point, it's not as drastic as the first turning point, but it's important too. It's important to know that it's there, and it's important to write it so it's there. At the end of that second act, we're going to have a second turning point, a big turning point that it's going to spin our character into the resolution. And this resolution usually takes the last fourth of our story. So the way we divide the story is the first fourth, the first quarter of our story is going to be the first act. Then the 2 second quarters, it's going to be the development of the story. And then the third quarter, it's going to be the end. In web series and in TV, if you want to go into another season, this resolution not only resolves all the problems that we have stated throughout the story, but it also opens new questions. And you want to open those questions so your audience says, I can't wait for the next season. It is very important as a writer to understand what the difference between a feature filmmaking, feature screenplay is, and a TV or a web series or any serialized writing happens. You don't want to just like conclude anything. You want to close up questions and open more so the audience still hooked, for lack of a better word. I don't like the word hook because it means almost like grabbing them. You want to make the audience participate in your story, and that for me is important, and I hope for you too. So now that we know this 3-act structure, we're going to apply this to our treatment. A treatment could be a 1-page document, a 3-page document, or a 20-page document. What is important about the treatment is that we do go into more deep detail. We start talking about the aesthetics of the film. We start talking about events that happen to this character. We start talking about details. We start bringing more characters in it. And the way I write them, I usually sit down for an hour or two and just start typing. And I start typing everything that I come up with. Boom, 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 boom. And once I have typed everything from top to bottom, I go back again and start checking that out. And I rewrite. And I work it out, and I take things out and put things in. And sometimes it doesn't work, sometimes it works. The most important thing about the treatment is to know what the story is going to be about and what the details of this story is. And it will help us a lot into the next step. Don't think your treatment needs to be perfect. There's no such thing as perfect at this moment of the game. Everything is experimenting, everything is seeing where the story is going to take you. Because as a writer, you think you have all the power and you think you're the god of storytelling. You're not. Usually the story drives you. You can have an idea and a map of where you want to go, but the story is really going to take you there, not you. Not you. You're not going to take the character is going to come up and surprise you constantly. So now let's build an outline. An outline, it's for me one of the most beautiful parts of this process, and I love it aside from developing character so much. What I do is that I take a whole bunch of flashcards and I write on each flashcard the episode that the first episode, the second episode, the three episode. Now I don't write the whole episode, of course. I write the main event of the episode, and then on the flashcard I write the beginning, middle, and end, and the hook of that episode. Understand right now, this is the beginning of the process. This is not exactly what's going to go into paper, and you're going to be playing with this and change orders and change things, and your characters are going to take you in different directions. You have to accept that. Be a little bit of a control freak and be a little bit of somebody who lets go. Both of them are important. So what you're going to do, it's like in pen and paper or in a set of flashcards like this one. I always have a set of flashcards close by, and I write down the main event in the top of the flashcard on a Sharpie, a big Sharpie, and then I take pencil so I can erase and rewrite, and right here smaller, the beginning of the episode, the middle of the episode, and the end of that episode, and what is going to drive me into the next episode. You can use the treatment to help you out with this. The treatment, it's going to guide you on what are the main events that happen, but it's important to do it. And once you do it, put it all together in front of you in a wall. And when you see it in a wall, you're going to start imagining the story and what happens and what doesn't happen. I, for example, like to use different color flashcards. So I use, for example, the blue flashcards to write the event and what happens in it. And then I use the pink flashcards to write what are the locations where it happens. Then I use the yellow flashcard to write what are the main characters that are involved in this. And then I use another color flashcard maybe to talk about what is the value that I am talking about regarding to the theme and regarding to what I really want to say at the end of the story in that episode. This is much easier for short episodes than it is for longer episodes. If you're doing 20 minutes, half hour, an hour long episodes, you might have to do this for every episode in a smaller scale. If you're writing 5 minutes, 10-minute episode, this is much easier to do. The dissecting of each episode in a flashcard. So start doing it. Take a moment, take pen and paper first, and write every event that's going to happen in a row. First, Ryan meets with roommate and show him the machine. After, Ryan finds that Nirvana, it's amazing. The next event, Ryan shares with his teachers and professors in the university what he accomplished. The fourth event, Dark Monk realizes that there's an energy coming from somewhere. And go on and on and on and on until you're done. From the beginning, you need to know already about how many episodes you want to make. Can this change? Sure, everything can change at this point. We're in the development process. We need to give ourselves permission to experiment and change and see how things work. So use this outline as the best moment to change things around. Maybe you realize that you need to insert a specific character that you have not thought about. Maybe you realize you need to insert a specific action that you haven't thought about. But the most important thing is to get that outline together, put it in flashcards in front of you so you can see the whole spectrum of the story. And you know whether you need to add, whether you need to take away. This story is going to start talking to you. Do listen to it. Well, and congratulations, you have come very, very far now, and you already have an amazing work done that a lot of people never do, and they just stay with the idea that they want to make a web series or a film and they never move forward. Now you have taken action, and I congratulate you for that. Another step in this first step of the writing process, it's also one of my favorites, it's the development of the characters. I don't think you need to develop every character, but I do think that you should know your main character and a few of the secondary characters. Also, depending on how much screen time a character has, you might want to know more about them or less about them. So how do you develop a character? Well, there are many ways to do it. One of them is to write a bio. Now, writing a bio sometimes is not just, it's not enough. You want to go deeper into these characters' lives and ask crazy questions about the character. There are two levels for each character. You have the external character and you have the internal character. And you want to know as much as you can about both. The external part of the character is their career, what they do, where do they go, where do they live? Are they married? Are they non-married? Who are their friends? Everything that regards externally. What do they wear? Where do they shop? Do they even shop? All that is important. Now, the internal part of your character, it's also incredibly important. As important as the external, if not more. Although the internal part of your character, when you're showing it on the screenplay, you're not showing their sadness. You need to show action. You need to show image that shows that they're sad. So keep that in mind while you're writing. But you still need to know their internal thing. What they like, what they don't like. What makes them sad? What drives them? What they want? What do they know? Do they fall in love? How often do they fall in love? What kind of people they fall in love with? What are their values? Are they Republican? Are they Democrat? Are they independent? Are they socialist, extreme capitalist? All this is important. Their values as characters, as people, are going to dictate how they behave in the situations that you put them in. Now, these things that you're going to be learning about your character and writing about your character, do not take them as the last word. Do not take them as if they're set in stone, because they are not. Once you start writing and once you start making these characters talk and making these characters take action in the circumstances that you're going to be putting them in, these characters are going to surprise you, just like real life people. You think they're going to do something, but this character, as you write, is going to tell you, nope, this is not what I'm doing. I'm doing something completely different. They surprise you. They're unpredictable. Because in many ways, the characters that you create are already human. Not human in the sense of like flesh and bone, but human in the sense that they're psychological beings. And they react to things in ways that sometimes we don't expect. So that's your next action, to develop your character. You can download one of our templates that helps you develop characters. Use it as much as you want. Use it, answer as many questions as you want. If you have more questions that you would like to figure out of your character, do. It's very important for you to know a little bit of each of your characters, so do not skip this step before you go into writing. So to wrap up, what have we done in this video? We have identified the elements of our story. We have written the logline, very important. I'm glad you did that because this is your calling card. You have written the treatment, or you have at least started writing the treatment. You created your outline for your season 1, at least your season 1. This outline is so important. Do not skip this step. Do it now if you haven't done it. And you also created your character. You developed the idea of your characters. Those are 5 actions that we already took in one video. How productive do you feel now? This is great, right? You're so much closer to having the script for your web series. Now, that's what we're going to do in the next video. In the next video, we're going to start writing the first episode and a few more if you have the time and you want to put the work. It's important to put the work, okay? And before we go, I want to recommend you a couple of books. These are very, very good books. They're going to help you in this and many more things you're going to be doing in your career when it comes to writing. The first book I want to recommend you, now that we're talking about character development, it's a book by Andrew Horton, and the name is Writing the Character-Centered Screenplay. It's a fantastic book on character development. Now, it's going to go on and on in things that are related to a feature film structure and how to develop a character in a feature film. All that is so valuable for the web series too. And it's really going to, if you are into character development, it's going to allow you to dig deep, deep, deep into how to develop your character and get to know your character. And he calls it a carnival of colors when he talks about character. And this is beautiful because he has an approach to character that it's very different to what other authors I have read have. Another book I want to talk to you about, it's also an amazing book by Robert McKee, and it's called Story. Almost every story screenwriter have already seen this book and read this book. It's a big book, 400 pages of anything. This is what I do. When I get blocked on my writing, I just open the book, and whatever I land, it usually has an answer for what problem I am going through. So really, if you only buy one book on screenwriting ever, this should be it. It's called Story by Robert McKee. There's a link down below so you can buy it on Amazon or wherever you want to buy it. Look for it. It really is so valuable. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for taking action. I will see you in the next video where we're going to be talking about writing the episodes of the web series. This is actual writing. We're going to get down to the nitty-gritty and do the hard work in the next episode. See you then. On an interior room night, web series creator 1 is sitting in his keyboard writing.